All right, and we are live. Another Friday live Q&A here at the Edge offices. I'm Paul Pui, CEO and co-founder of Edge, joined by
RJ, QA manager and support.
definitely the guy that you want to talk to if you're having any issues with Edge or just have any questions, how to do various things inside of the app, and sometimes just a shoulder to lean on in the cryptocurrency world. We've got people that kind of call in and just talk to you for I don't know how many minutes about
we're happy to listen.
their general happiness and pains about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, sometimes trading, or interfacing with, unfortunately, sometimes scam websites.
Yeah, or even other wallets. If you have issues, I still do my best, try to help out.
We do our best,
whether using
especially if
Edge
you're
or
sending
something
money from another wallet into Edge. We'll definitely do our best to help you out if that other wallet is having any other issues. And RJ's your man. We do have other people on support, but he's kind of our lead in that regard. But this Friday we got some things to talk about, some current events, some late news, some questions about our latest release.
Right.
And then we can kick it off with, should we talk about Binance?
Yeah, let's start with Binance.
Binance,
That's
so-
interesting.
Yeah, so one of the big questions in the industry is, well, number one, did Binance just get hacked? And if they did, what exactly was hacked?
Yeah.
So as a centralized exchange, obviously the big concern is money. Like getting hacked, losing money, losing my money, which I might have put with a custodian such as Binance. And it doesn't appear like that was necessarily the issue. But the word is out as to whether or not they may have at least been hacked for personal information.
Yeah. So on Reddit and some other websites, circulating are people's selfies, like holding their license or passport. So that is kind of scary.
It is. Personal information in some ways is maybe not as valuable, at least not as valuable per byte. Like a private key, stealing that, and you've got instantly quite a bit of money on it. But personal information can be incredibly valuable, and even before Bitcoin, personal information was sold on the dark web.
Yeah.
And so I won't call this necessarily a problem unique to kind of centralized exchanges, because other not so centralized or ephemeral temporary custody exchanges such as Shapeshift do this as well.
Right.
Or even inside Edge, we have partners that do have to take personal information such as Wire and Simplex, and that information they do their best to secure, but is at the risk of theft.
Right.
Because they have to
It's always
keep
a
that.
risk.
Yeah, it's really tough to sell Bitcoin. It's just kind of rewind to what is it like to be a company that sells Bitcoin? You're effectively taking what is reversible fiat money that can go back to the person that's sending it, and in exchange giving someone good, hard, anonymous, irreversible money.
Irreversible is keyword.
Keyword irreversible, and also anonymous.
Yeah.
Not 100% anonymous, but
Almost pseudonymous.
Pseudonymous to the point where if someone really tried, they could make it pretty much anonymous. And the challenge with that as an exchange that is taking in bad money, reversible money, and giving you good, irreversible private money is that if that payment does get reversed, or if it was sourced from someone that didn't really own that account, then
Right.
they lose out on that Bitcoin or other crypto. And so they inherently collect a lot of personal information so that they can make sure that that person really is who they say they are.
Right.
Right. This is a fraud issue, and it's really rooted in the current legacy financial system,
Right.
and it's not rooted in crypto. Crypto exposes the problem. It really shows what the problem is with the financial system, because our entire financial system digitally has been reversible.
Yeah.
So if any point in time there's a fraudulent transaction, well, they just reverse the whole thing, and no one really loses out.
Yeah, can it be like PayPal 6 months later, reverse the charge, and if you sold Bitcoin for PayPal money, then you could be essentially screwed.
Yep, exactly. And so what crypto does, it throws an entire wrench in this entire system of reversible payments. For the first time now, you're taking a digital payment in that flow of money. Say someone gets paid, via a check, a good old paper check for your salary. You deposit that bank, and from that bank, you make a PayPal transfer to someone else, and then that person takes that PayPal transfer and puts it in a bank, but then they go and buy Bitcoin with it. At some point in time in that entire process of bank to PayPal to an exchange, one of those transactions might have been fraudulent,
Right.
and it reverses everything, and it potentially reverses the money that went to the exchange. Yet they may have sent out actual irreversible cryptocurrency, putting them at risk.
Right.
So while many people blame cryptocurrency, oh, this sucks, it takes long, it requires a ton of KYC, it's not cryptocurrency's fault.
Right.
It's cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, exposing the flaws in the current system and making us realize, oh, this is not a very ideal system that we have today, and it becomes this bit of an oil and water mix.
Right. It's basically a legacy system, and the exchanges are the ones with the greater risk at this point.
Yep, exactly. Now, where exchanges incur a significantly smaller risk is when they only deal crypto.
Yeah.
And so Shapeshift and some other more centralized custodial exchanges before them didn't require any KYC. You create an account with a username and a password, or barely even an email and a password. You deposit crypto, and once you deposit the crypto, they know it's theirs. It's irreversible. They let you trade and then pull out the crypto. Shapeshift made that instant. They pioneered the kind of instant exchange concept, and they said, well, why should we? Why should we take KYC when, from a fraud point of view, there's
You're
no
sending
issue.
irreversible money.
You're sending us irreversible money, and we're going to send you back irreversible money. So why should we? And this is kind of the unfortunate piece about the regulatory environment that required them, as a U.S. company offering exchange services, to take KYC, because really all you did, Mr. U.S. government, is you compromise the security of all of the consumers.
Yeah. Because now we have to put at risk our personal information for the KYC stuff when these transactions are already irreversible.
They are irreversible.
Yeah.
They're secure. They can't be fraudulent. But now you're requiring pretty much everybody, all of the innocent people that just want to use the service, to give up personal information to a centralized authority, which may be hacked, like Binance might have been.
Right.
And so the fact that Binance, in and of itself, required any aspect of KYC is probably due to some regulatory burden.
Yeah.
I'm guess if you go way back, what was the first crypto-to-crypto exchange you remember? I remember the one that I.
For me, it was Shapeshift.
Well,
Yeah,
before them,
that.
where you deposited your money and you could trade it. Shapeshift is kind of the instant exchange.
Yeah, so Poloniex.
Poloniex, and before them,
Bitrex was another one.
Crypsy was the one that comes to mind for me. Good old Crypsy from way back in
And
2013.
And they ran off with it.
And they ran off with it, exactly. So you want to know your company,
Yeah.
but not know your customer. So KYC is to know the company and know that they're reputable and that they're not a Crypsy that's going to run away with the money. But for the company to need KYC on the user base, especially for an anonymous currency, that they know the user can't run away with.
Yeah, so essentially it should be the other way around.
It should be the other way around.
Information on the exchanges.
Yeah, you need the information on the exchanges, but Binance being what is seen in the industry as being more transparent, or a little bit more compliant, at least in some regions. They do KYC the users, and so now they've got the selfies of people with their personal identifier cards on a camera, and potentially put that at risk of a lot of users. Look, fortunately for me, I didn't actually have a Binance account.
I never made one either.
You
but
never made
imagine,
one, so we're not at risk.
You might go on Reddit or some social media forum and you'll see your picture there. That's
Exactly. With
nerve-wracking.
there's potential. I don't know if they ask for a social security card or a passport.
I think it was a license passport, like those photos that I
Yeah.
saw. They're holding their license and it's a picture with them.
It is scary,
Holding
but in all honesty, at this point, the way our system works, I almost assume that stuff is compromised. Like that personal info of my own is compromised.
Yeah, if it hasn't happened, it's bound.
If it hasn't happened, it will. Like, I have to show my ID for so many different things in life.
Right.
That at any point in time, a camera at a store could be pointing at that ID and get that information very easily. Social security numbers, which are supposed to be the holy grail of keep it private, are scattered around for various needs because of KYC needs. And so it hasn't really been what I would call that, very secure piece of personal information.
Right.
It's compromised left and right. I don't want to hear it. But what I'd prefer to see is kind of a more drastic shift in our identity infrastructure, where we're not providing these sensitive pieces of information for our identity, but instead we do digital signatures.
Yeah.
Right? Zero knowledge proofs. I prove that I'm over 21. Boy, that was a while ago.
Right.
Prove that I'm over 21 to be able to get a drink in the U.S. Prove that I have been making payments on my house on time for the past 5 years, mortgage payments, but I don't actually show that information. I don't actually show who I am. I don't show the social security number, which is kind of the private key in a way.
Can
to
you
other
name
people.
any exchanges that are kind of stepping into that direction instead of using like documents, but some kind of blockchain to prove like they're a certain age? and
Actually, there
older?
was not so much. This is less of a blockchain issue as it is a public-private key authentication
Right,
issue.
right.
We did actually run into. I just came back from Hong Kong at
Okay.
the Spot conference where I spoke on exchanges, non-custodial, custodial, security implications, and whatnot. and I ran into a company there that is actually is doing a KYC certification service for exchanges and other companies. And what they do is they take the information, validate the information, and then throw away the information, but keep it on the user's device.
Right.
And have the user then optionally submit it to other services if those services want that info. But they already validate that the user's public key
Yes.
owns a certain level of KYC. Like, hey, this person is valid, it's them, they've submitted sufficient documentation, and they basically stamp with their private key that this public key is good, is a good citizen.
Legit, it's good to go.
Yeah, they've provided enough proof that they are who they are. And then now an exchange can, without accepting at least as much personal information, they can accept a signature from that KYC service to claim that yes, this user is legitimate and good to do business with,
Gotcha.
without the exchange themselves having to hold personal information. That I think is the wave of the future, but unfortunately, due to a lot of rules and regulations, the exchange themselves would still be liable if that person was fraudulent. Like the bank
Because
will
of
still
regulations.
regulation and bank rules, and like the banks will still say, hey, you have a fraudulent transaction that came out of this specific user. It's up to you to go after them.
Right.
Right, but if they don't have that information, it's like, well, suddenly how do we go after that person? So I think a more drastic shift needs to happen in our industry before we can take public-private key type of authentication and identity more mainstream.
Right.
But that's what I think is the true solution to this Binance hack.
So it's still a ways off, but that is the step in the right direction in the future to avoid that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people might want to blame Binance, like, you're centralized, blah, 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 we need more DEXs and whatnot. I think the key is, because you're always going to have services that are going to want some level of, not necessarily identification, but you're going to want some level of validation that you are an individual that they can do business with, that you're upstanding enough to do business with. And for them to do that, they'll need to know some aspect of your history. And right now they do that by collecting all of it versus seeing other people validate you, maybe on a blockchain, maybe on a database. But that would be the step in the right direction to kind of eliminate companies like Binance from even having the data in the first place going forward. But in the meantime, we are where we are. Binance does have to collect personal information, so does Shapeshift. Fortunately for now, actually a few companies that do just instant exchanges. They do limit it to certain regions of the world, but they currently don't do it on every transaction. So
It just depends.
yeah, what do we have now inside Edge as far as instant exchanges?
Yeah, so we have Changely, ChangeNow, we have Shapeshift, we have Fast, we have Codex. What was the other one?
Those haven't been launched yet.
yeah.
We're working on that one.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So yeah, we're adding a lot more. So you
But
guys
Total?
see- Total. the
Total.
DX.
And of those that were added, and I don't know if we talked about, did we talk about Total? We did talk about Total
Yeah,
in
we
the
talked
last
about it a little bit.
in the last Friday Q&A. But Total is the first instance of DEX interactions integrated into Edge, and it being a DEX, it effectively doesn't require any KYC at all. You're accessing a decentralized network, a smart contract that's able to swap tokens, to and from very quickly. Actually, it's a great user experience.
And also
that's
smaller minimum amounts.
Smaller amounts.
Way smaller.
Yeah, way smaller amounts. A lot of people they try to swap $20, and a lot of the partners will say, "Sorry, there's minimum amounts that we require."
Yeah, this one you can even get away with as low as $2 for
$2,
exchange,
yeah, exactly. If you just want to kind of tinker and dabble with, token-to-token swaps, Total only supports Ethereum and ERC20 tokens, but if you want to dabble with that, $1, $2, give it a try and Edge. And most likely, the other swap providers would have too high of a minimum, and you'll end up with Total for those swaps. But that doesn't require KYC. Shapeshift does. Changely, ChangeNow, they don't require KYC by default, but the thing for people to be aware of is that they spot check transactions.
Yeah, so if you're doing something like daily high amounts of transactions, you could trigger it, but they don't require it up front. Not like Shapeshift, you need an account for that.
Right, exactly. So if your swap doesn't come back to you in about what we'd call, 20 minutes, about 2 confirmations on Bitcoin, about 20 minutes, then there's contact information in the transaction that you sent out that you can contact for those respective providers to ask them, hey, my transaction didn't come in. What's wrong? And most likely they might need to KYC you for that specific transaction.
Right.
And usually the KYC is relatively minimal. I've been spot checked, gave my name, address, phone number, and email, and then transaction.
Yeah, it's still a pretty easy process.
Pretty easy process. You don't have to do it up front. I think that's a key thing
Yeah.
in user experiences. You want to delay the friction to when it's really needed, as opposed to a big heavy amount of friction up front.
Right, and worst case scenario, if it does come up, then you can always turn that off along with Shapeshift, and the rest of it should be good.
Yeah, you can still use
Yeah,
Total.
so
You can
still
turn off
everything.
any of the providers that you don't want in the settings, and then use the remainder that are there.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Okay.
I think we kind of dug deep into the
Yeah.
Binance hack and the philosophy behind KYC, and why information is collected, and why we hope that information
Right.
doesn't get collected in the future.
And speaking of hacks, I wanted to touch base maybe a little bit, get some comments from you, Paul, in regards to the Coinbase hack, or almost succeeded Coinbase hack. So the story goes, some researchers posing to be from Cambridge got in touch with Coinbase. They exchanged emails, were talking to maybe several staff members, kind of build the trust, and then later sent a file to potentially try to get in their systems.
Yeah.
So it was some kind of Firefox or Chrome file, and I told them to update, and they had to install the file, which would have been the malware to get control of their systems. So could have been a lot worse, but I think the story here is, if they did succeed, keep your funds on edge, not your keys, not your money.
Yeah, keep your funds outside of a custodian. And so the first thing that I ask is, it was a very elaborate, probably somewhat costly in time-wise,
Yeah.
attempt at hacking Coinbase. And the first thing I think of is, what's the motive, reward, versus the effort necessary to execute this attack?
Right.
All right, it was fairly elaborate, took quite a bit of time, actual energy of real humans. It wasn't like just sending bots and DDoSing a system. It was actual humans having to interact, and they actually even researched the background of individual employees at the company.
Yeah, and not only that,
And
they
targeted
even
those
had
people.
the correct domain names from like the emails that they used.
Correct,
the
exactly.
Cambridge.
They had to hack domain names in order to spoof emails. So it was a very elaborate, probably somewhat costly, at least time costly attack. But if you look at the reward potential
Yeah.
of that attack, it's very high. Potentially billions of dollars worth of crypto. Hence, sure,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah, even if
Right.
they got access to the hot wallet, I'm pretty sure there's still a huge amount of funds in there.
Right, hot wallet, and at some point, there's some people in the company that have access to the cold wallets, and so the risk reward ratio is there, and that's, I think, why these type of attacks are being mounted in the first place. And this is probably the core reason why centralized custodians, exchanges or wallets, and there are some centralized custodial wallets. People forget about that. People take the word exchange and make it a bad word.
Yeah.
And they assume exchanges are the ones that are holding your money. It's not necessarily true. Edge is a non-custodial exchange. We don't
Right.
hold your money. But it's the custodial services, either wallets or exchanges, that are at risk, because the risk-reward ratio is really good, for attackers.
Yeah,
The
it makes
reward's
it
really
worth the
high for
risk.
the amount of effort you have to employ. In contrast, going after a system, such as Edge, where money, keys are client-side encrypted, and each vault, inside a user's phone, each Edge, app in a user's phone is encrypted with a different key. It's individual users' credentials.
Right.
And then that gets placed, while we might store the backups. The analogy I like to give is, if an attacker were to get into our system, say they did the same type of social engineering attack on
Yeah.
us, and got access to my computer and got access to maybe another one of our staff members' computer, and somehow got access into our servers, they would be walking into a gym locker room filled with hundreds of thousands, millions of
Locks.
lockers,
Yeah.
lockers, each with a different combination.
Right.
And they wouldn't even know what was inside each locker, with many of them just simply being empty.
Yeah, some of the wallets could have been completely empty inside those lockers.
Pretty empty. People just kind of created a wallet, didn't really use it. They might have created one, got a little $3 donation, which we do frequently for people to kind of onboard them. A little $3 donation, then just kind of bounce it around friends. You don't know what the value is inside that, and so the interest in attacking the system starts to significantly go down.
Right.
While there's still value there, the effort involved could be potentially much higher, and brute forcing passwords starts to become akin to almost like mining.
Yeah.
With the difference being, with mining, you kind of know what your reward is going to be once you have a certain amount of hash power.
And this
You,
one,
you
you
know the
don't
money
know.
there. Here you don't know. Like, yes, you might get lucky and hit a large account, or you might basically hit one that has, or a bunch that have nothing in it.
Right.
And so the interest of attackers definitely goes towards other platforms.
Yeah,
You know.
the one with easier risk.
Much
Much
lower,
easier.
in a way, still higher effort overall, but much higher reward.
Right.
Right, that centralization of funds, the pinata, right? You want to crack that pinata, and then there goes everything. And so that's I think a piece that people forget about is building security not to be perfect, because there's no such thing as perfect. Obviously, Coinbase has had a good track record, but their security model isn't perfect. No such thing is. But building one where the interest, the reward is lower than the effort to get there.
Right.
Exactly. And so it was a fairly elaborate kind of hacking attempt. To our understanding, it was not successful.
Yeah.
Right. So hats off
Right.
to them for, definitely doing and accomplishing what so far in the past years that they've been in operation has been a very, very hard task.
Yeah. Keeping an eye out.
Keeping an eye out
Yeah, catching it.
and realize that as this company grows, and they've been growing, as they grow, the problem they have is only going to increase.
Yeah.
It's only going to increase. And Andreas put it really, really well when he described centralized security versus self-custody security.
Right.
While I, as an individual, might not be able to put the same amount of money into securing my funds and time, energy, money into securing my funds as Coinbase could, if a service like Coinbase has 10 million users,
Yeah.
they have 10 million times as much money than the average person has,
Right.
like if they held it themselves, which means that they would need to put 10 million times more energy, money, and effort into
Yeah.
securing that money than I would. So if
Right.
I put $50 worth of effort
Mhm.
into securing my funds, and they have 1 million users, they have to put $50 million worth of effort
Yeah.
into securing those funds.
Right.
It's just they have to put that much more energy into securing it, and it doesn't scale.
Yeah, because it's a centralized vault.
Yeah, it doesn't
essentially.
scale. As more people enter, you double the user base, you double the funds on there, you double the reward for an attacker, and you double how much an attacker is willing to go through.
It's just a chest that keeps getting bigger and
It
bigger.
just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Bigger bounty.
So it's just a bigger and bigger and bigger bounty. And so it's they've survived thus far.
Yeah.
But I think that use case really, I don't think it's ever going to go away. I think those services will continue to exist, but I think they should ideally get relegated to the high-risk traders, like the people that are sitting there with bots, trading very frequently, on an exchange, doing specialized, maybe leveraged orders,
Leverage, right.
leveraged orders, market stop limit orders. They're not the average consumer.
Yeah.
Where these traders already know that they're putting a lot of money at risk. This just happens to be another one of those risks,
Right.
The risk of the exchange getting hacked happens to be one of those risks. But if you look back at the times when major exchanges such as Gox, were
Gox.
hacked and whatnot, the people that were really hurt by that and that complained the most, they weren't the traders. Most of the traders were like, yeah, I was trading. That was kind of like my play trade money. They were the people that were just, I just wanted to acquire some crypto,
And
and
just hold it on there.
that's where they held it.
Yeah.
And so getting that kind of user base off the centralized services, I think, is a good goal that the industry should move toward, and leave the gamblers, on the highly centralized exchanges. And I think that would be an okay path forward. I'd be okay with that.
Right.
Those exchanges aren't going anywhere. They'll continue to make a ton of money, but let's get the average consumer retail investor off of them.
Right, the ones that are not too active.
Not super active, you trade every week, every month. Admittedly, this is the trade-off. If you're going to be on one of those centralized exchanges, you've got all the fancy tools and the charts and whatnot, and you also have lower cost. But it's very inconvenient to trade infrequently on those.
Yeah.
If you're going to trade infrequently, it's put your money there, do a trade, take your money out.
Yeah.
Right? And
That is
so, if you're going to trade infrequently, the increased cost of using a more integrated service like Edge, we don't charge like 0.1% the way some exchanges do. We'll charge like 1%.
Yeah, it's still,
1,
still
2%.
doable for
So it's
trades.
higher. But if you trade maybe every month, you do a trade every month, 1% is in the noise
Yeah, it's not a bad
relative to the volatility of crypto.
and relative to the security you'll get by leaving it on edge and then doing the
Yeah,
trade.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the trade-off people forget about. People are like, oh my God, it's more expensive to do that. Yes, but expensive relative to what? Compared to the volatility of the currency, it's not a big deal. So keep that in mind. And obviously, the people out there probably fit into some different categories. So understand what category of a person you are and what trade-offs you are effectively making in choosing a platform to trade and use.
Right, right.
Cool. So that's.
So
I don't know any additional details about the Coinbase hack, but I do remember they did some elaborate email conversation attacks
Yep.
and
Social engineering.
and tried to exploit it. I think it was a 0-day in Firefox specifically,
Yeah,
not
to
Chrome.
make them like update an installation update.
Yeah, to be able to, well, actually to be able to have them click on a link
Yes.
in their email account that would enable the attacker to take control of the computer and go outside of the sandbox of a normal web application
Yeah.
and be able to run code on the computer. I don't think it would run it as root per se, but it could run it as a standard application, as if you just installed a standard application on the computer. So fairly elaborate. It's worth their time, and these are going to continue to happen. So realize that as you hold your money on the custodial services, these types of attacks are happening all the time,
Yeah.
like constantly. When.
Day in, day out.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
So speaking of hacks, and we want to talk a little bit about security reminders. Always watch out for impersonators. I think it's standard in support. Never give your password to anyone, even support. So whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or some other service, you'll notice how they never ask for the password. The same thing with us. We'll never ask for your password. I had let alone remote access. I had a user, give remote access to someone for support, but it ended up not being a support staff for that wallet. It wasn't even Edge, and they were able to remotely connect to their computer, gain full access, and get the passwords and
Get
sweep
funds.
the funds. Yeah.
Yeah, so general tip on the security reminder is that most security breaches are not technical, right?
Right.
As just like the attempt to get into Coinbase was a very social-based attack. It was having email conversations with people. This is the most likely way that someone is breached is via social engineering, and we've seen that a few times now where people are just convinced that they are talking to trustworthy other individuals,
Right.
who then have them like literally, hey, give me your password, give me your private key, send me money.
Yeah.
Send me money, and that will fix whatever problem you're having. Just be careful out there, everybody. Realize that there's a lot of people that are looking to scam you. This is irreversible money. You're not sending them a PayPal transaction, so don't give up anything what you deem valuable. The money is valuable. The private key is valuable.
Yeah.
Of course, passwords are valuable. You shouldn't give any of those three to anyone on the internet that may claim to be able to provide you help.
Right.
So definitely keep out. That's definitely one of the big security reminders, and hopefully we'll see a ramp down of these type of incidents.
Right.
Cool. You're in the support world here at Edge, so what else has come across your plate that I think people have been asking you about? Obviously, this is
Yes.
our live Q&A.
Yeah, so-
RJ gets all the actual questions.
Right.
And so here's our chance to kind of like verbally give the answers to some of those questions.
Okay, so a few reminders. We do get a lot of users with syncing issues. A lot of the time it's because they're on the old, outdated application of Edge.
Yes.
So a simple solution, update to the latest version. As of right now, it's 1.86. So if you update, that'll typically resolve, the situation with detecting or syncing or sending your transaction out.
Yeah,
And another
yeah.
thing, if you're still on Airbits is no longer updated, so you might have syncing issues. You want to update Edge if your device is compatible. And then lastly, one more announcement is that Wire recently sent some emails that were, a mistake that your account is disabled or whatnot. Disregard those emails. Your Wire account is still fine if you received it. I received it myself.
I did as well.
Yeah. So
Yep. Yeah, don't worry so much about that Wire email that went out. It was just a little glitch in their email system.
Right.
All your accounts are fine. Nothing's happened to them. Just an email glitch. And yes, on that note that RJ had mentioned, yeah, do keep the app updated. The network is constantly changing. Electrum servers are what we use to connect to the network. They're constantly changing. We're keeping that up to date. And so old versions of the app, especially Airbits, does rot. Keep Edge up to date. I think we're right about out of time. It's 12:30 right now. We actually started kind of on time today.
Yeah, I thought it would be-
So last thing I want to mention is just events,
Yeah.
right? Where we're going to be. We'd love to see you guys as we're out on the road. And next week, we're going to be at the Toronto Futurist Conference, Blockchain Futurist Conference. That's going on Tuesday and Wednesday next week, August 13 and 14. And then I will actually be over at the Blockchain Training Conference in Denver. That's end of this month, August 28th and 29th. We're going to be teaching people all about crypto, Bitcoin, blockchain, how it works. It's a very educational event. Andreas Antonopoulos is one of the key drivers of this conference.
Oh,
He'll
nice.
be
He's gonna be
speaking,
there.
and he's helping organize it. He's one of the organizers of the event.
Right.
As well, I'll be speaking at the Tel Aviv Blockchain Week. That's September 9th to the 14th. I'll be speaking on September 10th at the DeFi and dApps Day. That's over in Tel Aviv, Israel. And then I'm also speaking over at the World CryptoCon in Vegas. It's at the end of October, and we might have a few other things before then. But in the meantime, quite a few events that are lined up over the next few months. Definitely come by, say hi, let us know what you think about what we've been up to in building with Edge. And definitely tune in. We've got some exciting announcements over the next couple of weeks. Cool new integrations, new functionality you guys will love.
Right.
And feel free to ask questions either here, online, Twitter, Facebook, or on our live Q&A on YouTube. Thanks a lot, guys.
Right.
Have a great weekend.
See ya.